Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. And you may have noticed that there's a new intro. This is episode 151, and I've been using the same intro now for over a year and a half. And so, what I thought I might do is respond to some longtime listeners, longtime watchers who said that the original intro, which is at close to 40 seconds, was a little bit too long. So, this one is less than half that length. So I hope you like the intro. We're going to be using it for the next little while. Let me know. But this is Pod Save Chocolate, and this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. And this is the homepage of The Chocolate Life right now. Behind the scenes, I was thinking about other things. Here we are at the homepage of The Chocolate Life right now. And you can see the link for today's episode is up here in the top rail in the upper left-hand corner. And as I said, this episode is sponsored by the members. You can click on the green button. I'm logged in, so it says account here. But if you're not logged in or you're not a member, then it'll say join. Then you can become a member and support the work that we do here. There have always been a free membership since the community was started in 2008, since the Chocolate Life was founded in 2008. But if you're looking for consulting and coaching services, or you'd like to support the work I do, you can become a premium member by joining one of the premium tiers that are available to you. And with that, just go into the comments and let me know where in the world you are connecting from today. Or if you have a comment or a question about today's episode, which is all about news that fits to eat. Every month I do a news and AMA Ask Me Anything episode, and that is today's episode. And let's jump into it. Here's the post for today's episode. You don't have to follow along. The link to this is on the post. The link to this live stream archive is in this post. And there's also an archive of episodes. If you go click on the archives here, you'll find the archives of number 101 plus. And if you drop down, you can find the episodes from 1 to 100. And then there's also an archive of all the Chocolate Life Live episodes as well. So you can figure out what they're all about. And with that, we're at the October news and AMA. You can ask me anything, AMA, ask me anything about cocoa or chocolate. Before we continue, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the overlay here because it's going to get away of looking at the post, and say what you can do right later on is that you can scan the QR code, which is in the upper left-hand corner right now, and that QR code will take you to this page on the Chocolate Life. Or if you're watching on a screen or a phone and you've got a computer sitting next to you, you can do the same thing. So pretty cool. I wanted to let you know all about that. Anyway, with that, let's go and take a look at what today's episode is all about. The first thing I want to do is I want to point out that every single one of these episodes, I start off with the ongoing saga of the cost of cocoa. The number one thing that we learned in the last week about the cost of cocoa is that Cote d'Ivoire, right, is going to be raising, if it hasn't actually implemented it yet, the farm gate cocoa price for farmers by 39%, right, to the equivalent of US $4.50 per kilogram. Bang. And that Ghana has followed suit. So Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, the two largest producers in the world, have just raised their farm gate price to historic levels. And what that means is that there is now, in fact, a floor to how low the price of cocoa will go on the market. Some people have said the price of cocoa is going to settle at $4 a kilo at some point, not entirely certain when that's going to be. Others are saying that the price of cocoa can't fall below $4.50 a kilo because that's the farm gate price in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And nobody's really going to be undercutting the price they're charging. So we now have a floor for the price of cocoa going forward. And the floor for the price of cocoa is now higher. It's above, right, even the premium price of cocoa, of some cocoa a couple of years ago. So this $4,500 per ton would have been above the market price plus, for example, the fair trade premium. So just interesting thing to know. And it will be an interesting thing to compare, and I may do that in the coming weeks, to compare what the farm gate price of cocoa in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana are compared with what is called the living income reference price in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. So it'll be interesting to see how those things go. But one of the things that we can be assured of, right, is that going forward, that the price of cocoa on the major cocoa exchanges is not going to go below $4.50 a kilo. And it will not, unless for one reason or another, the authorities in Ghana, the COCOBOD, and Ivory Coast decide to some reason lower the farm gate price of cocoa, which I have trouble believing that they will do. Now that they've said it, any retreat on pricing is going to be a real challenge for many, many people. But having done that, why are we here today is because what we want to do is we want to go take a look, right? If you're in the business of making chocolate, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you understand what the price of cocoa is. And so this is a company called barchart.com. The link to this chart is in the post for today, and you can set up a free account so that you can look at this information. And what I recommend that you do is you put a note in your calendar, either first thing Monday morning or last thing on Friday evening. At some point during the week, what you want to do is check in on the price of cocoa. And what I think here, a lot of this information is quant information, things like relative strength and weighted alpha, which are, if you're actually trading cocoa, you might be interested in. But what I want you to do is scroll down into the page a little further, and here is a bit of editorial. So it says that the December ICE, the Commodities Exchange, New York cocoa, today is down 4.5%, and December ICE London cocoa is down 4.74%. And what do the editors at barchart.com think about this? What they say is that cocoa prices extended their plunge this week, with New York cocoa posting a 19-month nearest futures low, and cocoa reaching a 20-month low. And it says prices are selling off at this week's auctions by the governments of Ivory Coast and Ghana as they boosted the amount they pay farmers for their cocoa beans. So that's, I'm reading this paragraph here. So the outlook for abundant global supplies is hammering cocoa prices. So what is this telling you? There is an expectation among people who are close to the harvest that this year's harvest is going to be greater than anticipated. Now, will it be a surplus, right? I haven't seen anybody who says that the abundant global harvest is going to lead to a surplus. One of the reasons why prices are where they are is that over the previous 3 to 4 years, there's been a deficit, right? So the actual harvest has been less than the demand for cocoa. So is the expectation of abundance of global supplies going to lead to a surplus? And it might, because big companies have been pulling back on their commitments to buying cocoa. So just something to consider, that the expectation is going to be that the price of cocoa is going to float down, and it's going to float down because of an expectation that there will be abundant supply this year, perhaps not a surplus, but this is all expectations. If for some reason some event happens, hurricane comes up, hurricanes are very, very common in that part of the world, some unexpected weather event, just huge amounts of rain during harvest, for example, we still don't know, right? And so these prices are still volatile, although the volatility is within a narrower range than it has been over the last little while. So something to consider there. I want to go take a look at futures pricing chart. Again, this is at barchart.com. I'm going to zoom this up a little bit just so you can see it a little better. And so what we says is that cocoa, the cash price. So if I wanted to buy a contract, which is usually 10 metric tons on the exchanges, if I want to buy a contract, I can expect to pay, the last trade was at $6,433 a metric ton on a 10 metric ton contract. And what we can see is the price is going down. You see these prices from the previous, this is the change from the previous, from the open. And it's right at open, right? The high, low, So this is a change from 66.90. Um, and then what we can see is this is the price. If you wanted to buy a futures contract for December of 2025, you can buy a contract of 10 metric tons for $61.90. For March of 26, it's $6,216. And what we can see is a general tendency to float down. So they're expecting this time, 2 years from now, they expect the price of cocoa to be under $6,000 a metric ton. So this is commodity cocoa, bulk cocoa, on the New York Commodities Exchange. We're not looking at the price in pound sterling or in euros. This is US dollars. So we're seeing a general float. This roughly $6,000 a metric ton, again, is an expectation. It is traders who are involved in strategies to hedge, right? So they're going long on some and going short on others so that they can benefit from movement in the prices pretty much no matter what, or at least they're hedging their risk so they can minimize the losses that they might be subject to. So worthwhile going and taking a look and seeing what these things are. I mean, chances are you're not in a position to be able to buy 10 metric tons at the exchange prices. So you're going to find some intermediary who's maybe buying their cocoa at this prices and you're going to pay a premium. Or they're buying directly at farm gate price and you're buying directly from them, so you're not paying these prices. But this is sort of what the big chocolate and big cocoa think that prices are going to do over the next 2 years. And it's also people who are speculating in the market or think these may be independent traders who are taking positions, not necessarily people who are actual cocoa traders. But this is what they're expecting. The market is expecting the prices to do. So we've looked at those two. Let's go look at another website. This is called Trading Economics. I was looking at this. Sorry for the ads. I've got my VPN turned off, so I got performance a little bit. So what do they say? Cocoa futures slumped 5% towards $6,100 per ton. So the prices are going to be different between what barchart.com and what tradingeconomics.com because they're not reporting about the exact time of day, the same time of day. So there are going to be some differences, but they're roughly the same price. Hitting 1-year lows on Friday as the main crop and harvest got underway in West Africa, with farmers in Ivory Coast and Ghana encouraged to sell by higher farm gate prices. So Ghana raised its 2025 to 46.40. And then the Ivory Coast, as we said, was $4,500 a metric tons, right? So they want to boost farmer incomes and curb smuggling. So on the demand side, dealers expect third quarter grind data to show year-over-year declines across Europe. So the demand to buy cocoa, right, has dropped, right? And that's one of the things which is contributing to the price pressure. So, right, so what we do is we find, again, on speculation, that a brokerage firm or an analyst, Berenberg, downgraded Cadbury's parent, Mondelez, to hold from buy due to weak chocolate demand. So here are where things that aren't directly related to the price of cocoa, the farm gate price of cocoa, things that are not the fundamentals of growing cocoa, are having an influence on pricing and the way the market sees things, right? So overall, it says that the combination of higher farm gate prices and slowing demand weighed heavily on the cocoa markets, pushing futures to their lowest levels in a year. So what does that actually look like? So here's a chart. This is easier than the chart which has got the min-max bars on it. So this is saying what the price of cocoa has done over the last year, right? And we can see this is over the last month, general downward trend. Here's what's going over the last week. Here's what's happening in the last 24 hours or so. But let's go take a look at the 5-year trend. And then let's see if it'll give me the 10-year trend. So here's what's happening, right? So we see that the prices are relatively stable. They're trading within a band of roughly $2,000 a metric ton to $4,000 a metric ton. So that's a 100% difference. So which is when we say relatively stable. And then sometime toward late 2023, the price is beginning to skyrocket, peaking in April of 2024, right? And then it's been bouncing back and forth over a very broad range. So between $7,000 a metric ton and $12,000 a metric ton, more recently between $8,000 and $10,000 a metric ton, and today we're at $6,163. This is a 10 metric ton contract. So this represents $61,000 dollars. But what I want to point out here, if I can, let me see if I can click this to all. I can't do. Can I get a 25-year? Nope, can't even do a 50-year. What I do want to do is point out here is that these numbers are in constant dollar terms, right? What we aren't looking at here is we aren't looking at prices adjust for inflation. And so one of the things that I'm going to do at some point is I'm going to generate a chart. I'm going to take this pricing data, and then I'm going to look at inflation data and see how we can map, right? How is this priced? Because if we actually go take a look at 1997, the price there, which it was at that point, the record high price, I think was around $7,000 a metric ton. That if we adjust for inflation, that amounts to about $25,000 a metric ton in inflation adjusted terms. So the price of cocoa at 1997 prices would have to be $25,000 a metric ton in order to be comparable in today's terms, which they're not. Right? But you can take a look at it. You can go and read what it is they're saying here. You can go and read, what it is that it says over at barchart.com. You can go and read the editorial, which is down here, and you can decide, which of this advice you believe in. You can then go take a look at futures prices. I just showed you this one chart here, right, which is what's going to happen over roughly the next year. But you can also go and take a look at historical price history, right, which is the chart, the three-dot menu to the right of each. And here's what you can do is you've got the opening price at each day. So the opening price at a day is going to be the closing price from the day before, right? But we can see what the change is minus, right, the percent change, the actual change, right? And then we can get an idea where things are going. And so we can look and say, oh, let's go find out what the price was. I'm not going to go back all the way to today's date in 2024, but let's go back. Today is October 2nd. Let's go back to September 2nd. And what we can do, the price on that day was $7,500 a metric ton. Today, it's $6,400 a metric ton. So the price has changed dramatically. However, as we've now understood, based on the farm gate price increases in both Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, we have a new floor. I do not believe that the price will go below $4,500 a metric ton US, unless for some reason the authorities in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana lower the farm gate price, which I don't think they're going to do. You can also go to the International Cocoa Organization. Here I'm linking to the ICCO statistics page. No thanks. Right, so you can take a look at yesterday and then the first of the month, and then you can look at the price on the London Exchange and the New York Exchange, and this is in pounds sterling, right? And you can get the daily price and the future price, and you just get an idea for one of the things they don't do here is, and this is really, really frustrating for me, right, is that what you've got the London futures price in pounds sterling, the New York futures price in dollars per metric ton. You have the ICO price in dollars per metric ton, and the ICO price in euros per ton, which is, why don't I have it in pounds sterling per metric ton? So I don't understand exactly why this post is done. That makes the numbers across here not comparable unless you happen to know what the exchange rate is. So I can actually go, there are nearly 8,000 entries of daily prices. What I could do is I could download the entire file and then start running some algorithms against it. So when I talk about, I could now then download a file of daily exchange rates, right, that covered this period, right? So I could start in US dollars, or so to get the data and do this, it's not trivial, but it can be done. And I think it would be a worthwhile effort to go and do. So if it's something that you'd like to see me do, and you'd like to support that kind of analytical work because you think it could be interesting, let me know, and I'd be happy to go and see about how to go do it, because I I would have to pay for some of that data. But that's the end of this section today on the ongoing price of cocoa. Now, if you got a comment or a question, right? So for example, you might disagree with me that if Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana are setting their farm gate prices at where they are, does that set a new floor? And we need to recalibrate fair trade premiums and the living income reference price and all of that kind of dialogue against the new farm gate price in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. And is that going to have a ripple effect about the farm gate price in Ecuador and Peru and other producing countries around the world? It should, but we'll see how long it takes. One of the great things about markets that aren't controlled is that once farmers understand what prices are, they can very, very quickly start demanding prices, which obviously they can't do in a controlled economy where the government sets the prices. So having said that, all right, where else do we want to go and take a look at the news for today? So the first one is that it is not for sure, but it looks like the EUDR implementation date, which is December 31st, 2025, may be pushed back another year. Now, there are a lot of people who are against this, a lot of big companies, a lot of NGOs, a lot of organizations that have been pushing at this for a number of years. They're going, oh, this really, really, really does suck, right? Because we've spent all this money, we've got all this effort in getting ready for the EUDR. Why is the European Commission, right, pushing back, right, on the implementation date? Is in part because they realize that their IT systems, so the computer systems that have been developed, quote unquote developed. And here's one of the issues. Well, there has to be a sort of centralized aggregate database, which is hosted by the EC, right, itself. Responsibility for compliance, right, has been left on the shoulders of organizations within each EU country. And so each EU country has to have its own plan and its own budget for dealing with the computer systems. So this is actually the physical hardware infrastructure and the software infrastructure, right, which they need in order to be able to determine what import records, they have to audit a certain number of companies each year for compliance. And then based on that auditing, it sets up schedules for future compliance. And so each individual country each EU member country has to go and allocate the resources in order to be able to do this. And then at the centralized EC level, right, there needs to be an aggregate database. Now, it's quite possible that each country is just got the personnel resources, such to pay for the personnel resources and their local computer infrastructure, and they're just working with centralized infrastructure at the EC level, not entirely clear, which is what the next point is all about, right? Which is the European Commission is facing backlash over how much it's going to cost to implement the EUDR compliance, right? So we've got all these, right? And what is the challenge? Let's say that I have 50,000 farms in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana each, and that's a really, really low number. For math, let's make it 100,000 farms. Let's say there are 100,000 farms, individual farms, right, in Cote d'Ivoire alone. And let's say that each farm has a polygon map, right, which consists of 1,000 data points. So 100,000 times 1,000 is like a billion. 100,000, yeah, it's like a billion data points, right? And those data points are going to be, like, if they're longitude and latitude down to seconds. I mean, there's a fair amount of data associated with each data point, right? And so for each farm, every time there is that farm which is in a batch of cocoa. So the farms have been aggregated at a cooperative. The cooperative sends its cocoa to the port. We get 4 or 5 different cooperatives. Cocoa is mixed together under maybe mass balance or something like that. And then all of a sudden, one import record, which might have like 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 GPS data points, right? And those data points need to be checked against a database, right, of compliant and non-compliant coordinates. This is not insignificant data processing tasks. And even if you threw a huge amount of AI against it, which is an incredibly labor-intensive and energy intensive process, you end up with a really expensive systems. And the EUDR, the EC, has never disclosed how much IT to cover the compliance workload. They have never discussed how much this is going to cost. And there are some people who are saying that, oh my gosh, the systems can't handle the data load, right? And we just need to give ourselves another year, even though we've already, pushed back a year and we told everybody that we'd be ready to do this. And then they want to push back another year because they realize their systems can't handle it. It's just a huge mess, right? And so there is an idea which has come out of the Gartner group about the disillusionment phase. So a lot of people hop on to a new idea, hot technology, and then they run into issues related to development and implementation. And there is at a point where all of the original interest in the idea, let alone the technology, gets diffused because of people weren't thinking through some of the implications of doing it. And so we are at that point right now with the EUDR, right? Is it a good idea? I don't. So the goal is interesting. How do we reduce deforestation associated with agriculture? Absolutely, great idea. Is this sort of legislation the best way to go about doing it? From the point of view of legislators, it may be, right? But in fact, they didn't understand how that burden of compliance was going to be shared. Right? They talked about how farmers, would have to go be in compliance. Not just the farmers, but the countries would need to be in compliance. They didn't give enough thought to what that meant in terms of compliance on their end. So this is where we are right now. If we push back the EUDR another year, what does it mean for the future of the EUDR? And what does that mean for the related, compliance reporting directives? So the corporate sustainability reporting directive, there are a bunch of them. CSDDD, there are a bunch of related directives, all of which have huge IT implications. So as we think about these two things, which is what the price of cocoa is, where is the money going to come from to pay for all of these things? How is it affecting the price of chocolate? Is there going to be some stability in the marketplace now for the first time in quite some time? We don't know the answer to the question. Everything is still up in the air. There are still huge issues around here in the United States around the implications of tariffs and what that means. And so there's just an enormous amount of volatility, and volatility in the market makes everybody unhappy, right? It's just, how do I go about making sure that I can invest? The great thing, invest, right? Right, in a way that does not expose me to too many risks. So that's a huge question right now, and the kind of volatility associated with the cost of cocoa, the news about the EUDR and related things is a part of that, the part of that uncertainty. In the midst of all of this, right, the World Cocoa Foundation has announced a greenhouse gas accounting standards methodology, and here it is. Right, so there's a carbon strategy, and if you want to, you can go and download the strategy. I've already done that, and so here it is. I'm not suggesting that you're going to read it. It's a lot of pages, right? And what does it mean actually? And so this is the World Cocoa Foundation suggesting, right, an accounting methodology. It is not an accounting methodology which is World Cocoa Foundation members are going to be required to follow, right? It's just a suggestion for how to go about doing it. And why is the World Cocoa Foundation spending its money on this right now rather than addressing the root causes? I mean, yeah, it's okay, I guess, that this is what they're focusing on, but I think that this is another reporting standard. This is an accounting methodology. They're attempting to set up a rubric where, right, we can, if somebody is doing this, if one company is doing this and another company is doing this, and they're both implementing the methodology in the same way, it means they're directly comparable. So that's actually interesting and useful because one of the things that I have learned and I've tried to share over the course of these episodes is that if you have two things and they're measuring the same thing in different ways, they may not be directly comparable. And so there's all the sort of stuff that's going on and going on. But here's an example of what this accounting methodology attempts to normalize, actually probably regularize is the better term for it in database terms, which is if you have an irregular plot of land, how do you go about determining what the meaning of the boundaries are? So we have some terminology, LM, LUCR, they're explained up here. And so if you're going to talk about a farm boundary, you need to talk about it in this way. And it would be this is a very, very long document. I'm sitting here. How many pages is it? Right, it's 85 pages or more. No, it's 100. It's more than 100 pages. Oh, and I've still got a long way to go in terms of scrolling. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that will take a lot of paid attention to. Is it going to be meaningful? I don't know the answer to that question. Is it important that that this is what the World Cocoa Foundation is spending its money on? And again, given all of the other things that need to get done in terms of solving problems on the ground, on farms in producing countries, I don't know that this is the best way to spend the resources of World Cocoa Foundation members. I mean, it's not a bad way. I think that there is value in here. But what I want to do is I want to go through and say, here are the top 5 recommendations and which are going to be the easiest ones to implement, right? And perhaps more interestingly, if you're a chocolate maker and you're interested in carbon footprint, right, which again will have an impact on greenhouse gas emissions. If you're a small chocolate maker, what might you do? How much of this might you be able to implement, right? Because you can only implement from a certain part of the supply chain, right, to you, right? But it may be interesting in the way of the terms, so you talk to your suppliers. So that's a thing to consider. But you can go through it, and there are lots of checklists and there are lots of definitions. I mean, it's interesting, but if you're not deep into the weeds in accounting terminology, it's going to be a challenge to get through it. I looked through it, saw some of these things, and I'm going, oh my gosh. I mean, what I really want to have is I would want to have a large language model look at this document and generate half a dozen different summaries at a bunch of different levels, right? In order to be able to figure out what it was that I needed to do and how to go and attack it. So something to consider there. The next news point we want to get to for today, let's get this out of the way, is to talk about the Cacao of Excellence Awards for this year. The actual awards are going to be announced at CHOCOA, which is going to be, the trade fair is the 18th to the 20th of February 2026. The awards of the Cacao of Excellence are going to be presented during the CHOCOA trade fair. I've got a link to the CHOCOA 2026 website, so you can find out information about that. But let's go take a look at the Cacao of Excellence 2025 awards. And so here's the page. It's linked to, right? So here's the page. I loaded it earlier to make sure it was cached. But we have the 2025 50 best, right? And they are, so these are not the awards. These are the top 50. These will be organized into gold, silver, bronze, and it's the gold, silver, bronze that will be announced in February of 2026. And so we have here a table. And this table, one table for Africa and the Indian Ocean. Cool. We have a particular origin country, right? And then we have the producer name, the town in the region, the producer type, whether it's a cooperative or an individual farmer, then the idea of the sample and the type of sample. So if it's commercial or experimental or something like that. This might be an interesting table, but it's just insanely difficult to do much with. And then you have the Asia and Pacific table, right, which is in the same format, Central America and the Caribbean table, the South American table. What's really, really challenging about all this is that let's go and take a look at the 2023 edition, Producers of Excellence. And this is, to some extent, how I know what they're going to do with the 2025 edition. And so here we find out that what they've done is we don't have the table from the 2025. What we've got is we've got it organized by award level, by producing a by region. So Africa and the Ocean, Asia and the Pacific, we've got this. And now what we do is we've got all of these things are organized differently. And it's also interesting. So Green Farms Hawaii is a link to a page on the Cacao of Excellence Award, Hawaii 696. And this view details and this URL are identical. So I don't know what's going on there, right? But if we go take a look at previous editions, Producers of Excellence, let's go take a look at the 2017 edition, just for giggles, right? The 2017 edition, right, is reporting in an entirely different format. And this isn't an HTML table, this is an image embedded in the page. And it's, as you might imagine, this makes it impossible to compare what's going on in one year with what's going on in the other year, or do any other form of analysis. So one of the things that I did with the COCOA of Excellence, let me go to a different window here. Right. So here we have the 2023 edition. So what I did is I was able to go through, it's not on this page. Here we go, it's on this page. Let me make sure that this is the right page. Nope, maybe it's this page. I updated my, I updated the browser yesterday and I lost some things. So unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you much of the work that I did and the iteration that I did to be able to get to where I am today. But what I was able to do is I was able to generate a prompt. So this is a browser called Dia, and one of the reasons why I like to use Dia is I can put a page or something like that in a left frame, a left pane, and I can be running my chat. So what I could say is generate a table of winners. So it knows that I'm referring to this page. So here's a concise table, and it's done it for me. Yay, that's pretty cool, right? And there's more that I can do, and it's, excuse me, it's pulled the link from view details over here, and so scoops. I mean, it's pretty cool. It hasn't duplicated. I mean, these are not links. I mean, this is pretty cool, right? So what I did was I created a composite table, and the composite table is this. So here's a composite table of every year of the Cacao of Excellence Awards from 2010, right? Right. So there's a 2009, which is in a completely different format that I couldn't regularize. So I've got from 2010 through 2025. I haven't filled out all the details, but what I've also done is I've created a table which combines all of the different columns from all reporting columns from all of the different years. Right? And now we can start running. I wish I had this, but I noticed I wish I had the prompts, because there are some information that I can get from that. Is that now that I have everything in one table, I can go into Dia, I can create a new chat, I can upload a file from my computer. I'm going to upload a file which is downloads. Looks like I deleted it. No, here we go. And now I can say, right, right. What do I want to do? Calculate and summarize the CSV file by country and region. So very, very quickly, I can upload the CSV file. This, by the way, is incredibly faster. I mean, I can't tell you how much faster it is than actually trying to do this within Excel, which I'm no longer paying my Microsoft subscription. But what we find is that 25 Africa and Indian Ocean, 2017 Asian Pacific. And here's where we find one of the crazy problems is that Asia and Pacific has been redefined from Asia Pacific and Australia. And I believe we have Southeast Asia and Oceania. So what we're going to have to do is go and see if we can get the find a way to remap this in order to do this. By the way, it also gave me Python code if I wanted to run the Python code on my local computer, which I don't want to do because there's an iterative sense. I can go through and say, now that you've got here, I can say, update these results. And now I can say, all right, calculate percentages by region. Right. Oh, and it says that there were 191 entries, and I can go look at the spreadsheet and I can go find out, yeah, there are 191 rows. And so now I have an idea about, what is the distribution of winners in the Cacao of Excellence? And what we find is that, Central America, South America dominate in terms of the number of winners, which when we think about what specialty cocoa is. But what I can do is, let me calculate percentages by year. Percentages by region. Let's see what that does. All right. So I don't want to do a Python script. Oh, and it's just pasted the entire. So again, this is one of the great advantages. So if I wanted to run Python here, I could run Python on my computer, but I'm not going to, and I don't know why I'm passing it the data. Why don't I pass it the CSV file? Anyway, it's pretty crazy, but no. Can you do it? I don't want to run this Python script. So we'll see what it is that it says. But oh, cool. All right, so now what I can do is I can say, if I were to create a table for this, right? So can I say, allow me to do, change the presentation, the presentation format to a table. Let's see what it says, right? Because that's what it is that I wanted. Why am I doing this? All right, it's because cool, right? And I didn't get the results that I was looking for because I don't understand why 100% in 2019 was African in the ocean and 0% for the other region. So obviously there's some stuff going on. Oh, here we go. Right? So yeah. So now I have historical trend data, right? And this is why I think that if you're not using an LLM to work on data for you, you should be thinking about how do I go about we're using LLMs to be able to generate things. And this is the Dia browser, but it's ChatGPT 5 behind it. I have an account at Claude. I have an account at OpenAI. So what I do, and I've got a Google Gemini account. And so what I do is I will use different models to do different tasks. And so understanding, and then sometimes it's really cool is just take the same data set and run the same prompts in three different models to see how they generate different results. Or you can take a prompt that was generated in one model and move it to another model because for example, if you don't have the right kind of account, you run into data limits, right, to do this. I don't have any data limits on Google Gemini and ChatGPT via DIA. I can do as much query as I want to in any particular day. And it is this, you saw how I iterated, using this account to be able to get the kind of results that I was looking for very, very quickly. And this for me is groundbreaking to do this kind of work by hand, which is what I've been doing analytics like this since about 2018 with the European Bean to Bar Chocolates Awards. It was the first time I did it, the International Chocolate Awards. I've been doing this for some time now. Is that trying to grab all the data and putting it into one table, and then to be able to run analyses on the table are things I was able to do in under maybe 60 to 90 minutes, taking all of the Cacao of Excellence awards. Here's 2025, right? Right. But as we said, if we go to another year, Producers of Excellence, let's go to 2010, right? What we've got is an entirely different way that this is reported. So it's an entirely different format. And now what they've done is they've got contact information here, which they've done in these things. But all of a sudden we have a flavor category, which is really, really wild. And I do want to talk about the flavor stuff. So here is the PDF. You can download the PDF of all of the producers. And one of the things that you've got here, so you've got all the data, and it's because it's an Acrobat, you can copy and paste it. But which is what I used to do. But this is, let me go and actually share my screen again. So for me, this is really, really interesting. I'm going to go and make it bigger, right? So here, what we've got, make the right screen bigger, Clay. Here, what we have is we have a flavor wheel. And one of the great things about this flavor wheel is that I'm the one who designed this. And I got a colleague of mine to program it. So if you start seeing a lot of flavor wheels, the Cocoa of Excellence has updated this, and they now have their own tools to generate them, right? But beginning with the 2015 Cocoa of Excellence. So we did this 2015 through 2019, right? But here we have these flavor wheels, which are giving you the flavor data for the evaluated. So this is C so it's for cocoa. There's CH for chocolate. But this is one of the things that I'm prouder of, that my analytics and my way of thinking about this thing was able to generate the idea, because these are superior to spider graphs. I just wanted to point out, these are, because you can put two of them side by side and you can very, very easily compare them in a way that makes an enormous amount of sense. I mean, they're really, really easy. And if you have, for example, a cocoa one and a chocolate one, what you can do is put them on top of each other and animate them. So you can see the changes in flavor between cocoa and chocolate, and helps you understand the evolution of things that go on. So this is one of the reasons why I like this particular format and going on. And then finally, for today, what I'm going to do is, with today's post, is I'm just going to have a little bit of fun on Reddit, right? And what I want to do is I want to show you really quickly some ways that you can use Reddit to find out a whole bunch of information. So let's go back to the Reddit page, and let's go and close the chat window. So most of the time when people go to Reddit, they go here, and for example, I've highlighted, if you can see this, I've highlighted, r/chocolate is a community. that I participate in. And you see, there aren't a whole lot of communities that I participate in. I've got a food community, generically, a cheese community. I use Scrivener as a writing tool, so I'm in there to ask questions about it. But most of the communities I participate in are around chocolate. And so, how do I do that? So, the first thing to do is to type the word that you're interested in here in the top. So, I have typed chocolate, right? And it's important to know that the first results that you get, all right, are filtered by relevance. So, this is whatever the ranking algorithm that Reddit uses for relevance. Not sure, don't know which search engine they're using, free text search engine to do this. So I don't know how the relevance is calculated, but it's over all time. Right? And so we got chocolate just ruins everything. Um, and this is one of the reasons, I mean, if you look over here, you'll see that I got r/chocolate dreamhouse. This is one of the challenges of search when it comes to using a generic term like chocolate. So I have the r/chocolate community. Oh, I might want to explore r/chocolate, but I've got r/chocolate dreamhouse 2, which is about beautiful Black women, right? And it may be NSFW. So this is a challenge for most search engines. The way I would address this is that in the search engine, what I would do is I would attach a semantic network to the concept of chocolate. And I would say chocolate, not dogs, right? Not Labrador retrievers, not Black women, right? And things like that. So I've got chocolate leather. So I don't want, chocolate colored purses. I mean, there are ways to be able to filter out these results if that's what you're interested in. Or you could also chunk it. You can say, these are, as they've done here, these are about people, these are people who are somehow related to chocolate. I think that Reddit could do a much better job of doing that. But what we've got here is chocolate just ruins everything, fundraising chocolate. By the way, this is 10 months ago. So this is relevance over all time. What you can do is you can say, just show me the newest things, right? And 3 minutes ago, I don't know, got some songs ready. I don't know what had to do chocolate, uncertainty and chocolate pudding, right? So what does this all mean in terms of what you want to do? So you can actually go, I want things which are hot. However, Reddit assigns the relevance criterion hot. So it may have to be the number of votes and the number of comments, but this is 8 hours ago, and this was 31 minutes ago, 2 votes, 11 comments. I don't know why it's hot, right? And then we've got in the teenagers community, are you team milk chocolate, dark chocolate, white chocolate? Which is another entirely different issue, right? So when I was creating the Chocolate Life back in 2007, late 2007, early 2008, one of the challenges I had was that the community to do this on then was Facebook, right? And there might have been 300 million people on Facebook at the time. I think that's the number. It's the number I remember. If I wanted to find the 10,000 people who were truly interested in chocolate, they didn't have good search tools, right, to help me find the 10,000 people who might be interested in chocolate seriously. And would I want to engage with a Facebook group called Teenagers or a Facebook group called This or That PH? So yeah, finding chocolate lovers within a group called Food would be interesting, right? Chocolate coated strychnine in grandma's pantry. I mean, really, really weird, right? So for me, as I'm going to think about, oh, what do I want to write about? So let's go organize everything on Reddit by comment count, but I only want things within the last week. So these are topics in and around chocolate that are very highly, that have a lot of engagement. And you can see I'm only looking at the post level there. When I go into communities, right, these are not organized in any way that I can see. It's just that somehow chocolate is in the name and there are no sorting criteria. So I can't say I would like, oh, most relevant and most comments. I can't do any of that here. So it should be relatively easy to do this. Within the comments, relevance, I want new comments, right? And so this is where, again, for me as somebody who's following chocolate and wants to know what um, what consensus is around chocolate, what people are asking, what people are interested in, what people are thinking about. Um, this is perhaps the most accessible uh, content repository that I can get my hands on. And so one of the things that I can do is I can just scroll the page. Why am I scrolling the page? Because what I want to do is I want to get as much data on this page as I possibly can. That's important. I want to get as much data on the page as I possibly can. Right. And so the more data I have on the page, the more things I can go in and ask about, which is very, very important. So once I've done this, right, what I can do is I can go to chat, and this is something that I did earlier. I can say, okay, extract common ideas across the posts on this page and pair with the subreddit they were posted in. Count and display the number of times a particular subreddit is the source. This is cool. This helps me. So it says that across all of the posts that I scrolled down to, I have no idea how far I went down the list. I mean, there's nothing in Reddit that says show me the top 100, right? There, which would be very, very helpful, right? But across this entire page, which we see, it won't let me scroll to the top automatically. I jump to the top, which is the relevance of posts across all time. Very cool. The top themes are pricing and shrinkflation, Dubai chocolate, right? Chocolate is a craze, quality of chocolate versus compound chocolate, recipes and techniques, caffeine and health, and chocolate-scented perfumes. That's interesting. So common ideas on the page paired with subreddits. So we find pricing and shrinkflation are associated with the subreddits mildly infuriating, baking, Switzerland, anti-consumption, and mildly interesting. Where Dubai chocolate, hype, and backlash are in stupid food, Costco. Why is it in Costco? Because last month, one of the news items I talked about was that there was a recall associated with I believe, a Costco branded Dubai chocolate. Expectations versus reality. Phoenix, maybe Phoenix, Arizona, Detroit. Well, I don't understand what those things are. Trader Joe's, a candy, and not interesting. So very, very quickly, faster than I could do otherwise, and this is detail that most search engines will not give you. So you might be able to get to DuckDuckGo, and once you can ask Mistral, once you get a search result, to go and dive into it. You might be able to get this if you knew the prompts to be able to look at. But local shop recommendations and travel favorites, that's very cool. Visiting Iceland, that would be very cool. So you get an idea. So just a tool like this, right, gives me an enormous amount of information, right, which I can then use to focus my point of view. How am I going to spend my time? What are the concepts, right? It would be really great if what I could do is, within the concept of DIA, I could run this as what's called a cron job. I could say, trigger this on Monday morning at 5 o'clock. And so when I get to or at 8 o'clock, and then when I get to my desk at 9 o'clock, I can have the updated report. That would be very, very cool. But they don't have that capability yet. I just thought of it. And so I'm going to talk to the people at DIA and suggest maybe this is something they want to add. But what it's also done is it says it's given me the top themes. It's given me how those themes are associated with particular subreddits, right? And so Switzerland pricing and shrinkflation. Switzerland is associated with quality ingredients and real versus compound, right? And we see, again, ask Switzerland versus Switzerland. I wish there were a way to aggregate those two things. There might be, I don't know. But then mildly infuriating showed up as the source of the most posts here, followed by r/chocolate. So we're talking about the topic of chocolate. We're talking about the top themes of all time associated, the most relevant themes over all times, and these subs have been in operation. And what we do is we find that mildly infuriating submits more ideas about more posts about chocolate than the dedicated chocolate subreddit. interesting. Again, baking is up there, oddly satisfying. So you get an idea about what's going on, and now you can find out again of all the subs that were here, how many times that they were mentioned. So this is why, um, even if you have been resisting the idea of working with a an LLM, a large language model, to make your life easy. These are a couple of ways to make them easy. Number one, it's great for taking data from multiple pages and merging it into a common format. Absolutely important to be able to do that. And then it's a great way to summarize a lot of content very, very quickly, right? Again, for somebody like me who generates a lot of content around the concept of chocolate, I am constantly looking for new ideas, new topics to talk about. News and AMA is one of them, but then I'm also talking about topics in general, right? If I'm doing that research, this is incredibly important for me. And the tools that you're using are also incredibly important. Again, for me, having Dia, right, is really, really valuable because I can have the content that I'm looking at and the prompts that I'm using to analyze it right next to each other. Really, really valuable, right? As opposed to I'm looking at a page, I then have to copy the URL or the data off the page and then go to another application or to another window where I can't see the two things side by side quite as easily. And that it doesn't automatically refer back to things and it doesn't have memory the same way. This is a really valuable tool for me. So something for you to consider. I have a limited number of invites. If you'd like to contact me, you can send me an email to TCL, so the Chocolate Life TCL _info at thechocolatelife.com and say, hey, I'd like a DIA invite. I will be happy to send you a DIA invite so that you can, because it's in closed beta at the moment. You just can't go there and sign up for it. But that's that. And that's the end of today's episode of Pod Save Chocolate. So here's the post for today's episode. You can go and follow along, download, click on the links. All of them are there to be able to find out what it is that you're looking for. And this is the homepage of The Chocolate Life. The Chocolate Life, this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like all episodes of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. And so you can go, there's always a free membership tier, excuse me. There has been since it started in 2008, over like 17 and a half years ago. But if you click on the button up here, when you join, you're given the options to join a membership tour, a paid membership tier. There are at least 4 of them, running from $5 a month to $420 a year, depending on how you want to do it. And most of the membership tiers come with consulting or coaching hours involved. So if you want to get a one-on-one session with me, becoming a premium member is the fastest way to get a session, a one-on-one session where I can answer any question that you might have. That's the easiest way and the least expensive way to engage with me. And I'm not doing Patreon. I'm not doing network advertising. I'm doing all the things. And that's the way you can support the work that I'm doing. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also go and do all the things you can, like the channel, subscribe, like the video, subscribe to the channel, click, the thumbs up button, all those kinds of things. It really does help everything that we're doing here to make the Chocolate Life community grow. And let me know, do you like the new video intro? Right in the comments, right? Do you like the new video intro? It's half the length. Does it need more? Right? Is there enough there in terms of what it is that I'm going on? Certainly much, much simpler to the previous video intro. Let me know, and I will continue to iterate on it and work on it. And with that, I want to wish everybody a great weekend. And to go to the post on the Chocolate Life, because I have 3 scheduled episodes in October, one of which is an interview with Dustin Cornett about the upcoming Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival at the end of the weekend before Thanksgiving weekend this year in Rushville, Indiana. I'm going to be having a tasting episode with Tandy Peterson of Embers Chocolate, and she's got some interesting, she got an interesting announcement in terms of expanding out of a kitchen facility into a retail cafe. environment, and which is, given the times we're living in, a really interesting business decision to make. And I'm going to be publishing the third post in my The Changing Landscape of Cocoa Sourcing sometime in the next week. And then there's an episode of Pod Save Chocolate 17th. So 2 weeks from today, which is going to be an episode which is going to summarize all three of those episodes. So please join me then. Excuse me. And until then, remember, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you just might be doing it wrong. Ciao, everyone. Until the next time.